Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Wednesday, August 6th. I think it's Wednesday. I hope it's Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. And in What's Your Game, Danielle Smith news, immigration, and they're recruiting in Alberta foreign people to come in and be police officers. And Mocha's got an absolutely damaging report talking about all of that. Oh, and I've turned my sound down way too much. So that is very interesting, and we will be looking at that quite a lot today. I think that's big news. You can't go into forests or go hiking in Nova Scotia, and so that's really problematic as well. You can't just do that. It's not quite climate lockdowns, but I heard that they were going to start using the climate as a justification to prevent you from going into certain land, and that's the start of that, right? And I can't remember the name of that, but that's what they're starting to do in Nova Scotia, and we'll talk about that. And how can you open up an economy more than free trade? In Europe, which is the plan right now, or was the plan up until Europe made a deal with Donald Trump the other day, we already have free trade, 98% open free trade with Europe already under CETA, C-E-T-A, and it was negotiated in 2017. And so I don't know, like, are we talking about that 2% getting opened up too? Because is that going to replace the United States for trade? I just don't think so. I think it's a complete failed strategy. And I read somewhere yesterday, the well is dry, right? You can't get more than free trade. You can't open up the economy more than free trade. So this is not going to be the boon that they're claiming it would be. I mean, maybe it would be a nice little add-on, but it's not going to be the thing that can run your business. It can't replace the United States. And Canada is focusing almost exclusively on negotiating a deal with Mexico and Europe, and not the United States. Nobody's really being urgent at all about the United States. And that's weird because they're our biggest trading partners. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, here is Ryan, and he's highlighting this power play moment, talking about Mark Carney's failures up till now and what's coming next and trade deals. And here we go.
What do you make of the fact that, the Friday, August 1st deadline has come and gone? How would you sort of assess the position Canada is in at this moment, given that these tariffs have gone up? There are broad carve-outs under the current tariff regime, but some tariffs did go up, and those baseline tariffs when it comes to steel, aluminum, and the challenges related to tariffs for the auto industry, copper, it's still a very difficult moment. But how would you sort of assess how we got to this moment and where we are right now?
Yeah, we're in a definitively weakened position today than we were April 28th or August 1st. We have more tariffs, to your point, Katie, than we did since the last election. We have that new copper tariff. And based on the ambassador's comments, based on the prime minister's comments, it doesn't seem to me that we are necessarily further along in the renegotiation of that deal. So this is where the prime minister is going to run into a challenge. He was the one that laid out for Canadians during the election campaign that he would get a deal done and that this was a top priority. Now we are being told to be patient and that we can't take a bad deal. And I don't know how it can be both the greatest economic crisis of our lifetime, as the prime minister has claimed, but also simultaneously that patience is a virtue. So I think the prime minister is going to come under some continued challenge here as he tries to make the case that he is the right guy, but that really this very urgent crisis that absolutely demanded the attention of our nation can be dealt with sometime in 2026. I don't know why Canadians would buy that Donald Trump is going to be all that different a negotiator in a broader CUSMA renegotiation than how he's proving to be right now.
And Emily,
CUSMA's USMCA. And so that doesn't actually have to be renegotiated as far as I understand. Maybe there's every few years you have to come in and renegotiate certain things, but broadly it's not scheduled for full renegotiation until 2036 as far as I understand it, according to the Google search that I did. So weird. Pierre Poilievre is upset that we're not doing elbows up or something to that effect. And the fact that everybody's using this term drives me crazy. It's getting to the point now where I'm editing it out because I can't stand it. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Pierre Poilievre is sounding exactly like a liberal. He says Carney is breaking his signature campaign promise of elbows up and dollar for dollar retaliation. Carney's response to President Trump is back down, bow down, and elbows down. So Pierre's upset. He voted for Carney, obviously, and Carney's not delivering. Rupa is responding to Pierre, and she says, wait, you still support the self-harming dollar-for-dollar retaliation? Carney has said dollar-for-dollar retaliation makes no sense. And during the leaders' debate, when you weren't paying attention, Carney said, we've already moved on from dollar-for-dollar tariffs. So interesting. Pierre Poilievre seems to be really missing all across everywhere at this point in time. A lot of people say, I like Poilievre, but man, what happened to that guy? So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. He's failing. And are they going to replace him before the next election? Odds on favorite, I would say. Yes, I think maybe. I think that might happen. The food professor, if he doesn't win this election, and he's probably going to win this election, but if he doesn't win this election, he gets removed anyway. No leadership review required. The food professor says we're fighting against three of the world's largest economies, the United States, China, and India. All three disputes began in the last decade. There's a clear pattern. Our agri-food sector has suffered as a result. It's time we get our diplomatic act together. Yeah. The canola thing still hasn't been addressed by canola thing. I mean, China's put a big tariff on canola, stopped buying our canola, but that's what feeds Saskatchewan farmers, as far as I understand it. They've got big fields full of canola, and I don't think they have a buyer, and that's a big problem. Scott Moe was saying somebody's got to talk about this, and everybody didn't talk about it. So we've got to get our house in order, but we're nowhere near that. And that seems weird to me, that nobody is really interested in addressing any of these massive issues, not to mention the disputes with China and now the United States. How could we get into a trade dispute with the United States and think to ourselves, the best guy to do that is to fix this is Mark Carney? I don't think so. So instead of dealing with the United States, our trade delegation is down in Mexico, according to National Post. This was posted this morning, August 6th at 6 a.m. And they say Champagne Anand meet with Mexican officials with the goal of strengthening our country's ties. I know, we'll replace the United States economy with the Mexican economy. Yay, South America. Woo! So, pretty great. Super awesome. Why aren't we dealing with the fact that we don't have a trade deal yet and a whole bunch of other countries have a trade deal? And there are problems. There are problems with what's going on. And I've got some genuine, here's the impact. Red Pill Rick says, exports of steel, aluminum, and autos are tanking. Ontario is in big doo-doo. And so Chart 4, imports and exports of passenger car and light trucks, and exports of steel and aluminum. And you can see the steel and aluminum dropping to the bottom there. And that's not good, right? That's pretty bad. So why is our trade delegation hyper-focused on Mexico, right? Nicer destination. They've got all inclusives there. Super good. Pool games, right? The food professor says, I was in Mexico with grain farmers in February when all of this started. It quickly became clear that Canada had a real opportunity to deepen trade ties with Mexico, especially given the worsening relationship with the United States. But diplomatically, Canada doesn't even come close to Mexico. Since then, Mexican President Sheinbaum has consistently outmaneuvered Canada. Whenever a deadline loomed, Mexico secured a deal first, often well before Canada even showed up. Just last week, Mexico received a 90-day reprieve from President Trump simply because they know how to deal with him. Despite Trump's wall talk and his absurd Gulf of America nonsense, the Mexicans never made it personal. They stayed focused, and it worked. Predictably won. Meanwhile, Canada, the Gulf of America is now the Gulf of America on Google Maps. It's Google Map official, everybody. Come on. Meanwhile, Canada has become, if a Democrat president gets in there, they're going to rename the Gulf of America the Gulf of Mexico. Probably. I don't know. Because that would be very unpopular. People wouldn't like that in the States. Anyway, meanwhile, Canada has become a geopolitical train wreck. It's about time some of our cabinet ministers visited Mexico, not just to strengthen ties, but to learn something, because the difference is stark. While Mexico prioritized economic pragmatism, Canadian politicians were busy encouraging citizens to, quote, elbows up and disrespect the very institution of the U.S. presidency, regardless of who holds the office. Most of the world, including Mexicans, see Donald Trump as a grotesque, unsophisticated buffoon. I don't think so. I don't think that's true. But in diplomacy, that doesn't matter. What matters is the outcome. That's the difference between China and Mexico. I don't think that he's seen as a buffoon, but okay, food professor. Here is the trade deal that's in place between Europe and Canada, and I'm not sure if includes the United Kingdom. But anyway, I think that we do have a trade deal with the United Kingdom, but that's not included here, I guess. But yes, Canada has a free trade agreement with the European Union. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, is a free trade agreement between Canada and the EU and its member states, which has been provisionally applied since September 21, 2017, removing 98% of pre-existing tariffs between the two regions. The agreement also aims to boost trade and investment within the EU, eliminating 97.7% of tariffs on Canadian goods and Canada eliminating 98.2% of tariffs on EU goods with targets of 98.7 and 98.6 respectively by 2023. I wonder if that's happened. CETA is Canada's most comprehensive free trade agreement and has led to a significant increase in bilateral trade, with merchandise trade growing by 60% since 2017. So are we going to squeeze more blood from that stone, or is that well dry? It seems like that well is dry. Here's Red Pill Rick, and as I said, Trump's trade war is having an economic impact, but Carney is hyper-focused on photo ops, and that's pretty brutal. GovEXE says, Mark Carney says he's helping the softwood lumber sector with $1.2 billion in loans and grants. He doesn't mention that Brookfield holds significant positions in some of Canada's largest softwood lumber companies. How is this not a massive conflict of interest? It is a massive conflict of interest. And he goes and does the photo op, and we're supposed to just not question anything. And that's how our politics works, unfortunately. And I wish it weren't so, but here we are. Here's Ryan Gerritsen highlighting this. Carney's counter tariffs are hurting Canada's home builders and pushing buyers to hold on closing new homes. So they're not actually closing the new homes, and that's affecting the home builders' bottom line. This home builder from Calgary is an interesting name. Here we go.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his trade war. They're raising concerns about the rising cost of construction, including higher material costs and an uncertain supply chain. Andrea Hunkar reports.
As residential construction ramps up in Edmonton to address the housing crisis, builders and consumers are facing a major hurdle: U.S. tariffs and counter tariffs, driving up costs while the market cools.
Our customers that we've been working with, they have been extremely cautious in terms of closing a deal, and every time we talk to them, the tariffs is on their mind. And for us as builders, our prices have escalated and increased, I would say about 20%. And then every time we go back to the customers about these prices, it just sends another negative vibe for them to close the deal. So we have been affected by this, and the uncertainty is affecting our sales.
But industry leaders say it's not the U.S. tariffs directly impacting costs.
It's the Canadian tariffs that we put on in response to the U.S. tariffs. So us putting tariffs on a whole bunch of the U.S. products that we purchase to then build a home, that's where we're going to potentially see the impacts on housing costs. And in Canada and Alberta, really those are glass products. They're your major appliances, your washer, your dryer, your stove, your HVAC system, so your plumbing, your cooling, all those sorts of things.
But he says the bigger question is how this could impact the broader economy. General consumer demand, potential job losses, all the things that allow someone to afford a mortgage. Their national chapter is in Ottawa pushing for exemptions, so the dream of owning a home is still in reach.
Oh yeah. Yeah, $500,000 for your first house. That seems totally reasonable. It's in reach. We've increased your salary to $100,000 a year. Blacklock's reporter says MPs vote 5-4 for disclosure of confidential records for $1 billion financing of BC Ferries, purchase of China-made vessels. We can stop this loan, says Dan Albus, sponsor of the motion. Maybe, but I'm not sure. It seems like China's in charge in Canada in a big way, unless it's India in a different part of Canada that is... Honestly, it seems like Canada's being carved up and given over to different, Vancouver and BC seems to be handed over to China. The middle part seems to be handed over to India, Khalistan, kind of. And I keep joking that Khalistan is going to be in northern Saskatchewan, but maybe I'm not joking, right? And maybe that's not oil-rich enough territory either. So maybe it'll be in an oil-rich area. And then you move further east, and we've got Khalistani Sikhs, and we've got Muslim imams and all sorts of Muslim Brotherhood and all sorts of things like that. And so what's going on across Canada, right? Andy Lee's highlighting this situation where this Khalistani Gurdwara is getting federal funding, and that's interesting. Journalist V says Khalistanis have declared sovereign territory, the Republic of Khalistan in Surrey, British Columbia, at the Sikh Gurdwara. And Andy Lee says, oh, honestly, why are taxpayers paying for a building and housing an embassy for the imaginary sovereign nation of the Republic of Khalistan in British Columbia? Anyone? And so it says total revenue received from the federal government in 2023, $15,000. In 2021, $39,000. In 2020, $90,000. So very interesting. And then there's another one. It says total other gifts received for which a tax receipt was not issued by the charity. And so there's millions of dollars coming into the Gurdwara through that mechanism as well. And that's kind of opaque. You can't really see that, right? Whereas revenue received from the federal government, that raises eyebrows. Why? Why is the federal government funding Gurdwaras? That's weird, right? Seems like a strange thing to happen. Here is immigration in Canada. Now, I've got a whole invasion section, but it mostly has to do with the UK, so we'll leave it till later. But this is the immigration section, and apparently the CPC is having meetings to refocus their party's messaging on immigration. And so I'm interested to see how that rolls out. I wanted to give you guys a heads up that this was happening. And House of Commons staffer thinks that the CPC is about to become reasonable. They're about to take a reasonable stance on immigration. And my prediction is that the CPC is going to come out doubling down on, we need Blue Seal health immigrants to come in and run our healthcare and hospitals and all the rest. And we need people who can build houses, house building professionals. We need to bring them in too. And we need to bring in this group, and we need to bring in that group. And temporary foreign workers are really good, and temporary students are really, really good too. And why can't we build enough houses to bring in all of these people? And I think it's because the economy is a Ponzi scheme that needs a constant injection of these people to not completely collapse in on itself. But that's just my speculation. Here is House of Commons staffer, and he says, who wants to talk about it? The Conservatives do. I don't think they do. In fact, they have a 2-hour meeting today to clarify policy on it. Clarifying policy means some people are speaking out. So when you join a political party, in the caucus chamber, you can hash out your differences. You can say, well, I don't think that we should do this. I think we should do this. And then everybody has a conversation and you kind of vote on it. And then maybe you have an official vote on it. But one way or another, you come out of that room understanding the party's position on it. And then you pull the party line. Then you don't say anything against what the party's agreed upon. And if you want to say something the party's not agreed upon, then you have to leave the party. That's how it works. That's what is expected of you when you're in a political party. So people have been saying, yes, we need to deport. Yes, we need to do this. Yes, we need to do that. And I think they're going to be brought in line, and they're going to be told, you're speaking a bit too much about this, and you probably shouldn't. And so that's what I think is going to happen. But anyway, since half of the CPC caucus follows House of Commons staffer on here, it's a good place to drop your comments on Canadian immigration policy. I'll start. Everyone knows it's an issue, but there are disagreements in caucus about how strong a stance needs to be taken. Today's meeting may do it, or there may be more to come. Everyone needs to sing off the same hymn sheet, right? Yes, everybody believes in the same thing, hymn sheet. It will take work. Provinces, even regions and cities in the same province are really different when it comes to immigration needs or lack thereof. Just one such example, high season tourism areas rely on temporary foreign workers. It used to be that they relied on teenagers and kids, young adults, and now it's temporary foreign workers. And what Canadians don't want to do those jobs, just like they don't want to work on farms, they don't want to pick fruit, they don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. It would be character building to pick fruit, right? As a teenager, I know people who went planting trees, and they were out there, and they loved it. They loved it. They said, I couldn't spend any money. I could make a lot of money because the tree planting was piecework, and I loved it. And they were kind of isolated because they were so far north tree planting, and they loved it. And I feel like there's a subsection of people who would love working on an orchard or love working on a fruit farm or something like that. But now we have to have whole industries that, quote, rely on temporary foreign workers. Weird. Isn't that weird? We should probably start having babies again, if that's the case. Often the local real estate market is geared towards second homes and rentals. There isn't affordable real estate for actual Canadians to live and work there with hospitality wages. Agricultural areas, especially fruit and vegetables, suffer from a need for massive numbers of pickers for a month or two. That's all. Sometimes it can be locals, but the picking season corresponds usually with the school year. Not entirely feasible to do it only with locals. There are ways to solve those problems. Overall, on general immigration, we need to move to a policy of near zero for the foreseeable future. That is not going to happen from the Conservative Party of Canada. Period. If you're expecting that, prepare to be disappointed. Bigly. Big. Not even Trump is proposing that. Trump is increasing H-1B visas while he's hammering India with 25% tariffs. Not even Trump. Think about that, right? He's saying, oh yeah, we got to go down to zero. No, like that's not going to, that's not even on the table. And I wish it were, but it's not on the table. Right. And so I'll allow for a small number of high skill workers, doctors, engineers, but they must be a degree or near degree or they're not coming. People, that's not the reason the reason they're coming is for low cost labor. The reason they're coming is cheap labor. Canada doesn't want to pay premium labor. They want to have cheap labor. And so they're bringing in cheap labor to dilute the labor pool and reduce the cost of labor. That's the whole point. People are already here, no matter their educational background, may stay. I'm not about to start deporting people who came here under our terrible rules. We can revisit numbers every 5 years based on housing. Every 5 years? Yeah, we won't look at that problem for another 4 years. I hope it doesn't get worse between now and then. Right? Like, what an idiotic way to deal with that. So people are talking about immigration, and he's selling a product that is not going to come to fruition, no matter what, no matter who wants it. Remember the dairy cartel? We can't even undo supply management. Deportations? Come on. Or, near zero immigration? Come on, it's not going to happen. Here is Greg, and he's highlighting this. This is jaw-dropping, absolutely jaw-dropping, and we've got to say goodbye to the stream really soon. But this is jaw-dropping. We're going to listen to this first. So, what's your game, Danielle Smith? Greg Wycliffe says, "Did you know Danielle Smith wants to hire foreigners from Nigeria to become police officers in Alberta? The new Alberta police chief she appointed, Captain Singh Parhar, is a founder of the Retrain Nigeria, and Retrain Nigeria has a YouTube channel, and this is." I think on the Retrain Nigeria's YouTube channel, Mocha has this breakdown of who owns Retrain Nigeria, and we'll watch that, and then we'll watch the thing on their YouTube channel promoting this pathway to foreigners becoming police officers because nobody in Alberta wants to become a police officer. It's so crazy. Here we go.
One of the more troubling findings is Satpal Singh Parhar's involvement with Retrain Canada and Retrain Nigeria, affiliations that are absent from his now deleted LinkedIn profile. So how did we find out about it? Parhar claimed to be a freelance advisor for Solve Cyber Solutions, but according to the biography listed on his other firm, he is a president of Solve Cyber Solutions. Corporate records revealed that he also used to be a director of Solve Cyber Solutions. Solve Cyber Solutions is owned by a numbered company, so we pulled those records as well. They revealed that Parhar owns 9.28% of shares of Solve Cyber Solutions through that numbered company. That same numbered company also owns 100% of Retrain Canada, which powers Retrain Nigeria.
Ever wondered how people earn money doing nothing? Let me show you how.
Retrain presents itself
YouTube.
as a training and consulting company, offering workforce development across sectors like energy, finance, and IT. They are part of a network of interconnected firms involved in cybersecurity, data collection, immigration consulting, and more, with Parhar or his close associates holding senior roles across several of them.
Wow, right? He's the new chief of the Alberta Police Force. And then here is the video on the YouTube channel. This is the police chief's companies that he owns part ownership in that was just demonstrated by Mocha there. This is the YouTube channel, and this is what they're promoting.
We have good news. The province of Alberta launches new AAIP pathway for law enforcement professionals. This is our topic for today, specifically for those in law enforcement who want to immigrate to Canada to live and work as a police officer. I am sure you know a friend or family member you can share this unique Canada PR opportunity with. Whether you are in Nigeria, India, Ghana, Philippines, or any other country in the world, this could be the opportunity you have been waiting for. The new pathway aims to meet recruitment objectives for public protection and address crime throughout the province. Alberta has observed a significant decline in the number of residents pursuing careers in policing. This new PNP stream is designed to support Alberta Police Services by attracting qualified law enforcement professionals from around the world.
There you go. So very interesting situation going on there. And I think that the recruiting of foreign police to Alberta is very, very concerning. Somebody on the stream is saying sound issues, but I don't see any sound issues. Everything looks okay here. So I hope YouTube's not messing with me. But all of that said, I have to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody on the stream, and we will catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on as we do. Here is more concerning provincial news. Oh, this is Mocha's investigation, which kind of brings this all together a little bit. Immigration firms are advertising Danielle Smith's new pathway for foreigners to police Albertans. Whether you're in Nigeria, India, Ghana, Philippines, or any other country in the world, this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for, says RCIC registered immigration consultant Pius Equilago in a YouTube video. This is concerning Premier Smith's government's appointment Sat Parhar as Alberta's new police chief, whose businesses have official partnerships with immigration firms. Chief Parhar was once accused of nepotism during his time at the Calgary Police Service, where officers he groomed were nicknamed Friends of Sat. Chief Parhar's firm has ties to Nigeria, and he is a vocal advocate for diversity and inclusion. Will Alberta's new police force become a force of FOS, who are merely seeking citizenship? How can the integrity of investigations into homicides, transnational drug trafficking, and organized crime be ensured under a police force shaped by Danielle Smith and Satpal Singh Parhar? Yeah, good question. And I think that it's very, very concerning and questionable that that's going to happen for sure. Danielle Smith says police officers, so this is Rich after all that, right? This is 4:13 p.m. yesterday. Police officers are committed to catching violent offenders, but a flawed bail system repeatedly puts these criminals back on our streets. So why would she put a diversity and inclusion guy who wants to flood the police service with people, maybe from Nigeria, who knows, in charge? If it's as dire as she paints in this picture, why would she put people who can't do the job in charge? I don't understand, right? This isn't justice. It's a betrayal of victims, their families, and every law-abiding Albertan. Bail laws are determined by the federal government, yet they continue to release violent and repeat offenders into our communities. This has to stop. We keep pushing Ottawa to do what's right and prioritize the safety of Canadians. Read the article and decide for yourself. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. The bail laws are a problem, and I feel like there's a solution that is better than just saber rattling at the federal government. I think that maybe you could pass provincial laws that override the federal bail laws. Notwithstanding the federal government being stupid, we're going to implement these bail laws because the federal government's being stupid. I don't know. I'm sure there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. Trump would find a way, right? And I mean, not to say Trump is the paragon of virtue or like the best example, but as far as getting things done in an unlikely political situation, Trump is one of the best I've ever seen. He gets shit done. And whether you agree with it or not is, again, I don't know, good or bad. The big, beautiful bill had some pretty bad things in an omnibus bill, but he got it done, right? So I don't know, man. It's if actually getting something done is the marker, Trump is one of the best. Here is Sam Cooper, and he's talking about how Dave Eby is a national security threat, and he gives examples, and he's kind of laughing because he's just talking off the top of his head. But these are pretty serious allegations against Dave Eby. Very interesting. Here we go.
Very unfortunately, the worst of us that have sold out to get where they are too often in power in Canada. And to what you're saying, yeah, I do think that some very smart people around the world are realizing, you know, you couldn't make it up in Hollywood that someone like Premier David Eby and BC Ferries are giving a $1 billion ferry deal funded under the table by an Ottawa bank, basically, a development bank. It's an old story that we've covered in many ways, but just to get to the point, people like David Eby now are a very strong national security risk to North America. There's no way to sugarcoat this from the way that he's giving away. And I know you come from a First Nations background, and I'm very, very, very tuned into, what Canada needs to do to redress the past wrongs. But not to get off on a tangent, just just giving away lands like at the snap of a finger to First Nations that I know for a fact are under the influence of CCP, actors, is just another way that David Eby is a national security risk to Canada. And I've written about how the port of Vancouver is so deeply captured. And, when Kash Patel or President Trump or other people say some mean things about Vancouver, they're entirely accurate. And as you know, I do story after story that proves the point of that. So, yeah, a roundabout way to say that, yes, I do take it modestly that I'm pushing forward some ideas about how Canada is being used in the same way that Mexico, Belize, or Venezuela is being used by bad actors. Canada has been too used by bad actors, and now a lot, hopefully more people in Canada are starting to realize that, along with some smart people around the world.
Very, very interesting and big allegations talking about Dave Eby and the concerning situation happening there. Here's what's going on in Nova Scotia. Stay out of the woods. This is from novascotia.ca, okay, news.novascotia.ca. Travel activities in the woods restricted to prevent wildfires. So for your safety, comrade, you're not allowed to go in the woods. We don't want wildfires. So now you would understand that, right? That's a reasonable thing. The province is restricting travel and activities in the woods because continued hot, dry conditions have greatly increased the risk of wildfires. The restrictions, effective as of 4 p.m. today, August 5th, include hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through the woods are off limits. Camping is allowed only in campgrounds. These and other measures are in place on provincial, crown, and private lands until October 15th, or until conditions allow them to be lifted. The fine for violating the restrictions is $25,000. Conditions continue to be extremely dry until we get significant amount of rain. We're at an elevated risk of wildfires, said Premier Tim Houston. Most wildfires are caused by human activities, so to reduce the risk, we're keeping people out of the woods until conditions improve. I'm asking everyone to do the right thing. Don't light that campfire, stay out of the woods, and protect our people and communities. My vaccine protects you. Now, there are a whole bunch of other things going on. There's bad forestry management. There's leaving dead trees in. Bad forestry management is leaving dead trees in the forest. And there are all sorts of policies, just like around Jasper, that the Canadian government hasn't done, and the provincial government haven't done their due diligence and haven't done what they're supposed to do, what they're expected to do as the caretakers of that land to ensure that these risks are minimized. And now they're using that to justify things are real dry, so you can't access this crown land that you should be able to access. And again, this is all part of the 2030 agenda. And I don't want it to be true, but here we are, right? Like, this is real as far as I can see it. It's not pretend, it's not fake, right? Cedar Growth Weather Club says, does anyone in this country have any balls? Serious question. They're telling you you're not allowed to walk on your own land until October. Tell them to go F themselves. Okay, so yeah, no hiking, no fishing, use of vehicles in woods are not permitted, even on private land till October 15th. You're not allowed to do it. And they're saying this unilaterally with threat of fines, $25,000 worth of fines. And how many fines? I mean, Mark Friesen paid a lot of fines. There are a whole bunch of people who paid a bunch of fines, right? And so, my gosh, there's all sorts of concerning issues surrounding these edicts that are going in place, right? And they'll fine you and you'll be expected to pay. And the law will say, yes, you have to pay, even if the whole thing gets overturned. The justification is there. The court will see things the same way as the province is laying them out. And you will be labeled a crackpot who, prioritizes stupid individual freedom over the collective good of no fires, and they load it that way on purpose. Overalled Folkskel says, can't afford to holiday in the United States, stay in Canada, where if you're not miserable enough where you live, you can go on vacation to be miserable there too. Promise. Canada is a poop hole, and no one will convince me otherwise. F this place. So Nova Scotia bans hiking and use of vehicles in the woods. And yeah, restrictions went in place on Tuesday at 4 p.m. yesterday evening. Wild stuff. I'll be interested to see what Noel thinks when we come back with the Kitchen Table Talks. In some rare good news, this is happening. I've got bad news about the school board immediately following this, but good news here. Save Our Schools says, do you remember that terrible decision by Toronto District School Board to push around a beloved 30-year Toronto District School Board principal and essentially force him into retirement? The supervisor, appointed by the Ministry of Education to fix the Toronto District School Board, has made the Toronto District School Board reverse the transfer, a rare win against an authoritarian school board for students, parents, and the Rosedale community. And so that is good news. I'm glad that that's happened. Unfortunately, in my quest to find out if Doug Ford supports this, which is the Centennial High School in Guelph, encouraging boys to use the girls' washroom as a gender-inclusive, gender-variant bathroom. So the girls or gender-variant, girls or boys, but the boys get a boys' bathroom for themselves. Very, very strange. Here is the response after badgering them for the whole summer so far. Since June, I've been badgering these people. It says, thank you for your correspondence, saying, do you support this? This is a high school in Guelph, Ontario. They're doing this. They say, thank you for your correspondence regarding gender identity and gender expression policy in the Upper Grand District School Board. The too long didn't read is they support it, and they're implying that I'm somewhat of a problem for having a problem with it. The Ministry of Education is committed to a public school system that provides a safe place for every student to learn in a respectful and supportive environment. The ministry has a legislative and policy framework in place to support schools that are safe and welcoming for all students. The Education Act requires all district school boards to have policies in place to support equity and inclusion and establishes the duty of school boards to provide safe, accountable, and inclusive learning environments. And then they link to a policy program, Memorandum 119, that requires that school boards develop and implement equity and inclusive education guidelines. School board policies must be comprehensive and must cover prohibited grounds of discrimination, including gender identity and gender expression, as set out in the Ontario Human Rights Code. And as independent corporations, school boards are responsible for the implementation of equity and inclusive education policies for students, including the policy you reference at Upper Grand District School Board. You may wish to contact the principal of the school or supervisory officer of the school boards to communicate your concerns. Thanks for taking the time to write, and I hope you find this information helpful. So this was a subsection. This was a group outside. I don't know. It wasn't a Ministry of Education email that it came from. But this is red herring. This is them sending me to find another fern, right? Like they'd like another fern, but leafier this time. And so they want me to F off, and they want me to go be occupied with something else, like talking to the principal or talking to some other representative of the school board to get them to change this. That's not going to work, and you know that, and I know that, and it's insulting that they think that this is going to work for me. Like, holy cow, no, not a chance. So I'll be writing this up. This is a news article as far as I understand it, so I'll be putting it up on Canada Poly probably later today. And I think pressure needs to be applied because they're taking over some school boards, and obviously these school boards are cracked. But when I show them evidence that the school board is actively putting girls at a safety risk, they say, oh yeah, well, safety and gender identity and blah, 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 all these buzzwords. They need to be held accountable for their nonsense. I emailed them back and I said, in what way, please be specific, is allowing access for males into female bathrooms, boys into the girls' bathroom, because these are kids, in a high school, safe at all? Please explain, be explicit. And I have every intention. I'm going to be talking to John Carpe this Thursday, and I'm going to bring this to him because I think this is insane. This is absolutely crazy. It's crazy. And so they shouldn't be allowed to ignore parents like this. They need to understand how important an issue this is, and I hope they will. Here's some 2030 agenda stuff. And Donald Best says Ottawa police illegally used terrorism-level emergency powers to wiretap Detective Helen Gruss and her family. The goal was simple: stop Gruss from investigating a cluster of infant deaths that tripled the norm. Court records confirm the illegal wiretap. On December 29th, 2022, lawyers for Detective Gruss filed a motion regarding disclosure, demanding further access to police records and evidence in the case. And so they found out about the wiretap, and there's more to come, he says. There's more to be learned by the public about just how crazy things are in our legal system that does not work for us. It doesn't work for us, unfortunately. I wish it was not so. Richard says, in order to run a UK business, the government are forcing us to give them our facial recognition data. This could be used to track us via public facial recognition cameras, which is what happens in China. Reinforced by our new digital ID, the UK government are acquiring some powerful tools for tyranny. Companies House confirms identity verification rollout from the 18th of November 2025. There are other things happening in October 2025 as well that kind of coincide with this. So I bet you Carney is going to be having speech rules will try to be in place by the end of this year, it looks like. And so I hope I'm wrong. And I'll show you some YouTube stuff. I think it might be in this series. Hold on, it might be right here, but I could be wrong about that. No, it's not there. Speech right there. Yeah. So my YouTube channel used to make, and 13,000 subscribers in 2019, my 13,000 subscribers were making $800 a month. And that was down from a high when I had 8,000 subscribers and I was rounding like $1,300 a month or something like that. And so they changed the algorithm. And what they do is my videos are all monetized, but most of the views happen on the first day. And so after the first day happens, 12 hours later, they'll hit me with a copyright strike. Or not a copyright strike, but they'll say, oh, you used sound in this video that another video is copywritten. And so you have to go in and fix that. And then they'll turn the monetization back on. But all the monetization that happens before that goes to the other creator. And so I have been held to $65, 25,000 views, $65,000. So YouTube, it's a lead magnet for me. I don't get paid. I get paid from Spotify, and the ads on Spotify are actually pretty okay. But YouTube is actively trying to minimize the amount they pay me out. 25,000 views, $65. Ridiculous. And Rumble does the same. They've found a way to completely neuter anyone's ability to make money if you speak out. That's the whole purpose. If you say things that people don't like. So that's the whole purpose. Here's Antonio. He says Christianity is under attack by our own government. Canadians better wake up. Yeah. Can you see it? Here we go.
Does Canada have freedom of religion? Apparently not. American Christian worship singer Sean Feucht, pardon me if I have that pronounced wrong, came to Canada to sing Christian worship music. And was he welcomed with open arms? No. All 6 of his venues were cancelled. The city of Vaughan, Ontario cancelled the event on the basis of health and safety, as well as community standards and well-being. Parks Canada in Halifax and the city of Charlottetown cancelled on the basis of public safety concerns. Moncton cancelled because apparently he didn't comply with the city's code of conduct. And Quebec City cancelled because he was controversial. Was he doing anything illegal? Nope. Was he doing anything hateful? Nope. He and his fellow Christians were just trying to exercise their right to religious freedom, and these cities and municipalities decided to bow to anti-Christian bigotry. Could they have allowed it to continue and have law enforcement supervise the protests? Yeah. Let's be clear though, the threat to public safety came from the protesters and the hateful backlash, not from the event themselves. What makes this whole situation even worse is a church in Montreal is now being fined because they had the audacity to open up their church to host Sean Feucht, and they didn't have a permit. Since when do Christian churches need a permit to worship? The city of Montreal was trying to say it was a concert. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to a Christian worship service before, but there is a very fine line between a concert and a Christian worship service. You could say that a concert happens every Sunday. So
there you go. And I've been to Christian worship services with bands, and I thought they're pretty tight. This band seems like they practice often. They were good musicians. What can I say? And it's not my thing generally, but there are a whole bunch of examples all across Canada of these style worship ceremonies. And is it a concert? Well, it is if the government says it is. J.K. Rowling says Western society is currently divided between people who know that this is a man and are prepared to say so, and those who know this is a man but lie out of obedience to an ideology. There is no third option. Nobody on earth thinks Roxanne Tickle is actually a woman. Yeah, that dude's got some mental health issues, and we should stop affirming those mental health issues. Invasion Stuff. Disclosed TV is reporting UK's intelligence services reopen summer internship where no white English can apply. So who are we looking for? Not you, Whitey. If you are from one of the following: Black, Asian, mixed heritage, or other ethnic minority backgrounds. And I've said this before. I think that they are going to all of this encouraging mixed backgrounds, and we will higher mixed backgrounds, if you have a mixed background, blah, 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 they're going to switch the table on us. They're going to flip the table on us. And what's going to happen is they're going to say, if you're mixed race, you're actually a lower class. And people who are pure blood, blah, pure blood Danes, pure blood this, pure blood that, they're top of the heap. And pure blood, these people, the top of the heap. You know who these people are, you know what I'm saying? And so that's how it's going to be flipped on people. And that's how they get a subclass. And it's the caste system in India. There are countless historical examples, and it's easy to do this because you can't miss it, right? On your skin color, can't miss it. And so you can wedge a society without that. Easy to wedge a society without that. Religions, the Tutsi versus the Hutu, right? Like they look similar enough. The height was used, the Hutu versus the Hutu versus the Tutsi, right? So, but they wedged using height, cut down the tall trees, right? And so like, it's a very interesting situation. It doesn't matter really, but it just makes it easier if you have something to point at and say, this thing, right? And so, wild. The UK government, just like the Canadian government, is engaging in racist hiring practices. Bernie says, I'm not laughing. It's hysteria setting in. The deeply stupid one-in, one-out migrant deal with France lists the following surrender terms, reported in The Guardian. The UK pays all transport and administration costs in both directions. France can veto any migrant that that England wants to return for no reason required. We can't cross-check fingerprints of the ones they send, and they won't run Eurodac checks for us. We must process removals within 14 days of arrival, or we lose the right to remove them. Only around 50 migrants a week can be returned, about 5% of weekly crossings. Migrants can block their return using human rights appeals. We can't return those citing vague public interest concerns. The UK must accept asylum seekers France chooses with no independent vetting. It's so idiotic, my brain hurts. I say again, you have a navy, right? What's it for? Why do you have a navy if they can't protect the country from invaders from France? And why is France sending a bunch of Middle Eastern people in small boats? What's going on with that? That seems really, really strange. Here's a guy on the water, and he's talking about what's going on. He says the French Navy is escorting this. So if you open fire on the small boats, like I was talking about yesterday, you might have a problem with the French destroyer, right? And then World War III would really kick off. It'd look a lot like World War II. Well, maybe not.
So the government announced yesterday they had a new deal with France supposed to stop boats crossing the channel. So I thought I'd come out here and see what's going on. I'm on the English Channel, probably about 7 or 8 miles off Calais, and behind me you can see a French warship, and just next to it is a dinghy full of illegal immigrants. The French making absolutely no attempt whatsoever to stop it. They've been shadowing it for the last 3 hours. It's about 2 hours from British waters. They're going to be arriving in the UK later on today, so quite clearly the government's claims to be fixing this with their new deal are not working. The evidence is right behind me on the English Channel, and the French doing absolutely nothing whatsoever to stop that boat. They could quite easily have stopped that boat using the warship near French shores, as the Belgians do, as the Australians do, but they're doing nothing at all. I'll post some further updates later as we get more news from here on the English Channel.
Why are we allowing an invasion like this to continue and destroy the West? Doesn't make any sense. Why would our politicians continue to allow it? It doesn't make any sense. Here is Bohemian Atmosphere, and they say The Guardian is in full damage control mode. Disputed or debunked claims about migration and crime in the United Kingdom. As politicians face criticism for promoting misleading data, here are some claims that do not bear scrutiny. And so, yeah, they're lying about what's going on, about the invasion of Ukraine, etc. Or excuse me, the invasion of the UK. And because they're lying, they're involved. They're part of the whole plot to keep you unawares. Yvonne says, this is what Carney wants for Canada. All the creepy surveillance the EU is foisting on its people. Nothing about closer ties to the EU is good for Canadians. Toby says the EU is edging towards its biggest peacetime surveillance experiment yet, scanning every private message before it's even sent. So we want to read your text messages before it gets sent through the encryption stuff of WhatsApp. So we don't break WhatsApp's encryption, but we read everything. We've got it all, right? And so the bad guys will just stop using those things in favor of things that the government doesn't understand or is easily hidden. Corey says, The uncomfortable truth that many don't like to admit is that smaller attempts at propaganda or similar attempts at propaganda have been made many times already, and they've fallen for it every time. So the Gaza thing is the Time magazine cover, and that cover was set up, right? It was set up by a photographer who's telling a story, who's not telling the truth. Wilford says, shot and chaser, Russia, Ukraine is bad too, but I don't think I've ever seen this level of dishonesty in reporting. And it's not entirely one-sided around an international incident before. So the Time magazine picture and the staging of the picture, because it's a staged picture, right? And so Gaza is used to frame the argument of the current year, right? Through this lens, you have to look at things this way. Starving people, but the West is being invaded, full-blown invaded, and nobody's talking about that. And we've already talked about the censorship on YouTube, so we'll carry on. Here's recognizing the state of Palestine gives credence to Hamas and rewards Hamas. That's the position of the United States government. I don't really talk about all of this because the intricacies of all of this, it's a wizard's circle. We're supposed to talk about this endlessly while ignoring the invasion of Canada and the West, and I don't want to. So if you want Israel news, Gaza news, then find somebody else. But this is tangentially related, and I just want to make sure that people understand that this is the position of the United States government, and what the Canadian government is doing is flying in the face of the United States, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. Here's press secretary in the U.S.
The Palestinian state, the president expressed his displeasure and his disagreement with the leaders of France, the United Kingdom, and Canada. He feels as though that's rewarding Hamas at a time where Hamas is the true impediment to a ceasefire and to the release of all of the hostages. On the second question about a Palestinian state,
the hostages are being used to endlessly, like the hostages are a black box of, oh my gosh, you've been held hostage in Israel for years, or in wherever for years, Palestine, Gaza for years, since October 7th. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And like, there's all sorts, it's like a grab box of evidenceless, pretty women, children, whole families killed, all of these things that are just meant to pull on your heartstrings, meant to make you feel all these things, but they don't actually have a high value or a high bar for proving their claims, right? And the hostages, what hostages? Like, they bombed the shit out of Gaza. Is Gaza a parking lot? Is Gaza like a complete rubble? Is that what it is? Because they were hiding the hostages there last I heard, and now the hostages are somewhere else and still viable and still being released at some point. So all of it seems to conflict. There doesn't seem to be anything that's true. Not the starving kid, not the starving adult, not the Time magazine cover, none of it seems to be true. It seems to be we're being fed pablum and we're opening our mouth for more. And when we refuse, they say, open your mouth to the airplane, Mark, bzzz, and then they force it in my mouth anyway. I don't want to. I don't care. Why can't we talk about the ongoing invasion of Canada? Why can't we talk about the ongoing invasion of the West? No? We have to talk about Gaza? Weird. Not me. Anyway, sorry. Quick waylay. Here's the USA to finish this off. And Alternative News says Trump vows to pull the United States out of the Ukrainian war. And so that's interesting. He says the U.S. is working hard to withdraw itself from the mess of the Ukraine conflict. President Trump told reporters Tuesday, this is Biden's war. This is not my war. I'm here to get us out of it. It's a mess, and I'm here to get us out. So apparently wants to get them out. And Nick says, just in, Trump envoy Steve W.'s meeting with Putin in Moscow just ended after 3 hours per TASS. Hopefully all that time means Witkoff made some headway in the peace deal. Maybe. We'll see. Here's Gunther, and he's got some Obama treason news. Gunther says LFG, that means let's effing go. Subpoenas sent to Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton requiring their testimony in connection with Jeffrey Epstein has been issued by the House Oversight Committee. I wish it wasn't I wish it wasn't Epstein stuff necessarily. I wish it was, although Clinton is Epstein, but email servers, lots of other stuff too. I wish it was more about the 2020 coup and not about the 2016 coup, 2019, 2020 coup, that kind of stuff rather than Epstein. But I guess we'll see what's going on with Epstein. I feel like if they're coming in on Epstein, maybe they're not going to come in for anything else. I don't know. We'll see. X22 is reporting subpoenas have been issued to several politicians requiring them to testify before Congress. Hillary Clinton, October 9th. Bill Clinton, October 14th. Merrick Garland, October 2nd. James Comey, October 7th. William Barr, August 18th. Alberto Gonzales, August 26th. Jeff Sessions, August 28th. Director Mueller, September 2nd. Loretta Lynch, September 9th. Eric Holder, September 30th. So things are going to be interesting all through the fall, and we'll see how that all plays out from August 18th start. And we've got William Barr and Jeff Sessions and Alberto Gonzales before the end of the month. So that's going to be interesting, right? So we'll see how that all plays out. People seem excited. I don't know if anything's going to actually happen. It seems like sometimes when they go into congressional hearings, the congressional people yell at them, or sometimes the Democrats yell at them, sometimes the Republicans yell at them. And when the Republicans yell, the Democrats are nice. When the Democrats yell, the Republicans are nice. And you get your side's version, like, oh man, this person really let Loretta Lynch have it, and so on and so forth, right? And if your side really went after one person, then you get that video. But if somebody else made a really good point on the other side, you don't see that video as much. And I feel like it's just part of the pantomime. And what happens from it? Usually nothing, right? So congressional subpoenas, cool. Are you going to put anybody in jail at all? Or are we just going to have a pantomime where people yell and they're medium satisfied with people getting yelled at, but nothing else happens? I'm not going to be satisfied with that, but that may be how it goes. Here's the Texas stuff. This guy's saying he's proud to stand up and run away from Texas to prevent quorum and prevent this thing from happening. And people are saying the Texas Democrats are running away like cowards. And according to X alerts, apparently Texas state troopers are actively searching the streets to locate and arrest the Democratic House members who have refused to return to the House floor. So apparently they're in Texas and police are looking for them. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out as well. I don't know if I'm convinced that this whole thing is what it seems. Apparently crime in DC is very, very bad. And I was in DC years ago. I think it was 2012. And we went on an American history tour. We went to Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C., Gettysburg, and a bunch of different places. I've liked American politics for a very long time. And we were walking around D.C. and we made a wrong turn. And we were going to the National Museum, and I thought there was a faster way, I think, or something like that. And we ended up kind of like across the street and down a bit from a soup kitchen. And we had to walk past it to get to where I thought we should go. And as we were getting closer, I was like, this doesn't seem safe. Like this, how your spider sense goes? Happened to be in New Jersey as well. And we got on a bus and missed being mugged by like inches. But I was like, this doesn't seem safe. So we turned around and nothing bad happened. But there was a whole bunch of people lined up for a soup kitchen that were looking at us like we were their next meal. And I was like, there's something weird about that. They didn't chase us. But I feel like had we gone a couple of more steps, we might have been close enough that they think maybe we could outrun them. So yeah, I don't know, man. Washington, D.C. is crazy town. And it was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago. My gosh. But apparently Donald Trump has taken notice. Big Balls stopped a carjacking and got beat the heck out of by 8 assailants. And he's sitting here a bloody mess. Okay, so this is apparently the Doge guy, Big Balls, who stepped in to save this woman. And now Donald Trump is heard about this, and he's talking about the crime in D.C. He says, crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youth gangs and gang members, some 14, 15, 16-year-olds, are randomly attacking, mugging, and maiming and shooting innocent citizens at the same time, knowing that they will be almost immediately released. They're not afraid of law enforcement because they know nothing ever happens to them, but it's going to happen now. The law in D.C. must be changed to prosecute these minors as adults and lock them up for a long time, starting at age 14. The most recent victim was beaten mercilessly by local thugs. Washington, D.C. must be safe, clean, and beautiful for all Americans, and importantly for the world to see. If D.C. doesn't get its act together and quickly, we will have no choice but to take federal control of the city and run this city how it should be run, and put criminals on notice that they're not going to get away with it anymore. Perhaps it should have been done a long time ago. Then this incredible young man and so many others would not have had to go through the horrors of violent crime. If this continues, I'm going to exert my powers and federalize this city, make America great again. So you do it or I'm going to do it, and I'm not messing around. Here's an Epstein thing, and I just thought it was an interesting tangential thread that you might be interested in reading, but I'm not going to go through it too much. Mario says, New York Times just dropped a bombshell Epstein mansion photos and documents. New photos from inside Jeffrey Epstein's 7-story Manhattan lair reveal exactly how he entertained the world's most powerful people while hiding cameras in his bedroom. The entrance, lined with dozens of prosthetic eyeballs. I'm sure those prosthetic eyeballs didn't see anything. A sculpture of a bride clutching a rope dangled in the main atrium. This gets so much worse. Epstein's dining room and credenza was a shrine to his connections. Framed photos showed him with Pope John Paul II, Mick Jagger, Fidel Castro, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Richard Branson, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, Trump and Melania, Ghislaine Maxwell's cropped out, Saudi crown prince, plus a dollar bill signed by Bill Gates saying I was wrong. So there you go. And there's more to it. Creepy stuff. Looks like Epstein, looks like the island, right? So here's a bedroom decked out in blue and white. And I mean, the implications of that. Here's a letter from Woody Harrelson, or Woody, what's his name? Woody Allen. I was going to say the director. It's obviously the director. He's the guy who married his adopted daughter, right? Here's the last clip for today. So Epstein Island, weird stuff. Epstein lair in New York, weird stuff. Here's Robert Kennedy Jr. talking about how he's determined that mRNA technology poses more risk than benefit. They're still giving out the COVID shots. So until that stops, I don't believe anything's happened. Here we go.
Hi, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine.
I'm hesitant to believe that this cat and mouse game that he's describing actually exists. But okay. But I'm glad that they're talking about how bad the mRNA vaccine is. It still seems weird because they're opening the door, or they're keeping the door open to further interventions in the future, right? Better mRNA that takes into account this mutation. Don't worry, this mRNA will mutate with the virus, right? Like, I don't know, man. There's a pathway. It just seems like, this is almost 3 minutes long, so we're not going to list all of it, but it's all concerning. The things happening across the West are even more concerning now than they were during COVID, because at least during COVID, you could see your enemy and you could say, we know you're lying, you crazy people. And now we can't see the enemy. And if you call them out for lying, it's not obvious to everybody. And in fact, it seems like they're normalizing this reality into, if you don't believe it, you're the one who's somehow deficit, right? And I think that that's even more scary than COVID, because at least in COVID, we knew who our enemies were. In this situation, we've got Danielle Smith doing Lord knows what in Alberta, right? And pretending that she's on your side. And we've got all sorts of people who are pretending that it's for your health and for your safety, comrade. But, you know, don't worry where that police officer comes from. He's going to uphold the laws of the land. Like, you can't go in the woods camping anymore, right? So, man, again, it seems much worse than 2020. And I hope I'm wrong about that, but my gosh, it's concerning. So that's enough of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.